Hi everyone, it's Laura here for Studio Katia, and in today's video I'm going to share with you how to create a winter card using the Floral Snowflake stencil and the Holiday Village stamp set. As a first step, I started working on my background. I have some Bristol Smooth cardstock by Strathmore that I die cut with the rectangle die in the Darling Ribbon and Frames dies. The rectangle die in the set cuts a panel that measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, so the standard A2 size, and also adds a nice dotted detail all around. I'm doing some ink blending with my Distress Oxides and I'm using Shaded Lilac and Blueprint Sketch. I thought I would use Nude Lavender too, but I decided instead to stick to Blueprint Sketch and Shaded Lilac because I wasn't in love with the way the Nude Lavender was looking on this background. At least it was not the look I was going for this card. And then I also brought in a little bit of chipped sapphire to darken up the edges. Once I was done ink blending, I moved on and used the Floral Snowflake stencil by Studio Katia together with this glass bead glitter gel. This is a new to me medium by Faber Castell and I decided to try it out on this card. As the name says, it is a gel medium which has some glitter and some tiny glass beads in it, which will create a lot of shine and a lot of texture on your projects. I am applying the gel through the stencil using a craft knife and I'm going to create a design where I have part of the snowflake on opposite corners of my card front. You could also position the stencil on the center of your card and you will create a beautiful focal point that way. But for today's design, I felt it would be nicer to have these two portions of the snowflake on opposite corners of the card. As I am applying the gel, it looks white, but it will dry clear, and because of the glitter and the glass beads in it, it will create a lot of shine on the card front. But as you can see, you could also use white texture paste or white glitter paste, and it would look gorgeous. I set my background aside to dry, and then I moved on and started working on my images. I decided to use stamps from the Holiday Village stamp set by Studio Katia, and to do some coloring with my color blend pencils. I'm stamping the images with Spectrum Noir ink in the color Flagstone, and then I picked a few pencils that I felt were going to match nicely with the color palette that I have on my background. As always, before starting to color, I'm going to make sure that all my pencils are nice and sharp so that I can apply the color precisely and I can blend them nicely with each other. And then I'm going to start doing some coloring. I decided to use some lilacs to shade the areas where I have snow and the trees too, to give the impression that they are covered in snow as well. For the accents on the houses, I decided to use some teal blues, which I felt were going to contrast nicely with the blues that I have on the background, which are instead a little bit more purplish. And then I decided to use some cool grays to shade the walls of the houses and some light blues to shade the glass on the windows. The coloring is pretty simple and it was rather quick, so I'm going to leave you with some music while I finish coloring the images, and I will be back once it's time to start assembling the card. Once I was done coloring the images, I die cut them with the coordinating dies, and then I moved on and started working on my sentiment. I used Flagstone ink by Spectrum Noir to stamp it on some white cardstock that I had die cut with the Darling Ribbon and Frames dies, so that once I go ahead and trim down the sentiment into a banner, I have the stitched detail at the edges of the banner too, and all the stitching will be continuous on my card front. The background was not completely dry at this point, but I wanted to go ahead and continue creating my card, so I decided to use Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl to add a little bit of extra shimmer to the card and some detail to that central area that looked a little bit empty to me. The glitter gel was partially dry, as I said, but it was hard enough for me to be able to go ahead and continue working on my card without risking to ruin the stenciled image. So I was just a little bit careful, but obviously the safest choice is to let this dry completely before you go ahead and continue to make your cards. I decided to raise the images and the sentiment banner over some foam tape. This is Scotch 3M foam tape, and I did that to add just a little bit of dimension and extra interest on the card, and to separate the focal images from the background, which has a lot of shimmer and texture. I first glued down the sentiment banner, and I used the lines on my grid mat to make sure that I was going to adhere it nice and straight. You can also use a T-square ruler if you prefer. And then I moved on and I created this cute winter village by adhering the houses right above the sentiment strip, and I raised them on some foam tape as well, so that they would be level with the sentiment banner. I mounted everything on a top folding A2 card base, cut to 8.5 by 5.5 inches and scored at 4.25 inches, and that finished off my card. I have to say that I really love the way this card turned out. I love this cute winter village and I love all the sparkle on the background. The gel is not completely dry yet, but you will see the final effect in the pictures at the end of this video and in the blog post that will be linked below. If you did enjoy this tutorial, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe for more card making and paper crafting inspiration. As always, thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.